A man does what he must, in spite of personal consequences, in spite of obstacles and dangers and pressures, and that is the basis of all human morality. Feelings aroused by the touch of someone's hand, the sound of music, the smell of a flower, a beautiful sunset, a work of art, love, laughter, hope and faith, all work on both the unconscious and the conscious aspects of the self, and they have physiological consequences as well. The consequences of a lack of new knowledge is decades of stagnation. The next generation will be poorer than this one. The truth is often terrifying, which I think is one of the motifs of Larry and Andrew's cinema. The cost of knowledge is an important theme. In the second and third films, they explore the consequences of Neo's choice to know the truth. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. The consequences of an act affect the probability of its occurring again. If religion were true, its followers would not try to bludgeon their young into an artificial conformity, but would merely insist on their unbending quest for truth, irrespective of artificial backgrounds or practical consequences. I draw from the absurd three consequences: my revolt, my liberty, my passion. There can be no equality or opportunity if men and women and children be not shielded in their lives from the consequences of great industrial and social processes which they cannot alter, control, or singly cope with. Life is supposed to be about love and good times, and so I've forgiven myself after paying the consequences of my bad decisions, and I'm ready to move forward and allow my life to be a light to others that it's never over, even for a person like me, who has lost a tremendous amount of respect among my peers, my fans, my friends and family. Logical consequences are the scarecrows of fools and the beacons of wise men. Hunger and malnutrition have devastating consequences for children and have been linked to low birth weight and birth defects, obesity, mental and physical health problems, and poorer educational outcomes. I was sure I'd set the world on fire, and it was hard for a young feller like me to realize the truth, that I hadn't set the world on fire, and I was totally unprepared to handle the consequences if The Big Trail had been a success and launched me as a star. Science is the knowledge of consequences, and dependence of one fact upon another. Unfortunately, corruption is widespread in government agencies and public enterprises. Our political system promotes nepotism and wasting money. This has undermined our legal system and confidence in the functioning of the state. One of the consequences is that many citizens don't pay their taxes. The important consequences to the American states from this Declaration of Independence, considered as the ground and foundation of a future government, naturally suggest the propriety of proclaiming it in such a manner as that the people may be universally informed of it. In this life, we have to make many choices. Some are very important choices, some are not. Many of our choices are between good and evil. The choices we make, however, determine to a large extent our happiness or our unhappiness, because we have to live with the consequences of our choices. I think it's brought the world a lot closer together, and will continue to do that. There are downsides to everything. There are unintended consequences to everything. The most corrosive piece of technology that I've ever seen is called television, but then, again, television, at its best, is magnificent. Is the proposed operation likely to succeed? What might the consequences of failure? Is it in the realm of practicability in terms of material and supplies? Choosing to avoid uncomfortable feelings offers immediate short-term relief, but avoidance can lead to long-term consequences. I like technology, but the Black Mirror is more what the consequences are, and it doesn't tend to be about technology itself. It tends to be how we use or misuse it. We've not really thought through the consequences of it. In nature there are neither rewards nor punishments, there are consequences. We seek the truth and will endure the consequences. It is easy to dodge our responsibilities, but we cannot dodge the consequences of dodging our responsibilities. The medium is the message. This is merely to say that the personal and social consequences of any medium, that is, of any extension of ourselves, result from the new scale that is introduced into our affairs by each extension of ourselves, or by any new technology. Every person remembers some moment in their life where they witnessed some injustice, big or small, and looked away because the consequences of intervening seemed too intimidating. But there's a limit to the amount of incivility and inequality and inhumanity that each individual can tolerate. I crossed that line, and I'm no longer alone. The art of economics consists in looking not merely at the immediate but at the longer effects of any act or policy. It consists in tracing the consequences of that policy not merely for one group but for all groups. Whether you call it Buddhism or another religion, self-discipline, that's important. Self-discipline with awareness of consequences. Ultimately, leadership is not about glorious crowning acts. It's about keeping your team focused on a goal and motivated to do their best to achieve it, especially when the stakes are high and the consequences really matter. It is about laying the groundwork for other success, and then standing back and letting them shine. Globalization is not a monolithic force but an evolving set of consequences, some good, some bad and some unintended. It is the new reality. How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it? There is only one basic human right, the right to do as you damn well please. And with it comes the only basic human duty, the duty to take the consequences. Men who are in earnest are not afraid of consequences. A responsible choice is a choice that creates consequences that you are willing to assume responsibility for. A thug is someone who stands on his own. He lives by the decisions he makes and accepts the consequences. A thug is comfortable in his own skin. I wear mine like a glove. Nothing is worth doing unless the consequences may be serious. But men never violate the laws of God without suffering the consequences, sooner or later. Acceptance of what has happened is the first step to overcoming the consequences of any misfortune. Sometimes when I consider what tremendous consequences come from little things, I am tempted to think there are no little things. Poor eating habits developed at an early age lead to a lifetime of real health consequences. To be a good leader, you have to be a good communicator. As a leader, you have to communicate your intent every chance you get, and if you fail to do that, you will pay the consequences. Nothing happens in a vacuum in life. Every action has a series of consequences, and sometimes it takes a long time to fully understand the consequences of our actions. There's no such thing as work-life balance. There are work-life choices, and you make them, and they have consequences. A man is born alone and dies alone, and he experiences the good and bad consequences of his karma alone, and he goes alone to hell or the supreme abode. I always mention stacking the dishwasher, any opportunity. But it's the consequences, it's the food poisoning and the potential death that will come with not loading the dishwasher properly. A mountain is composed of tiny grains of earth. The ocean is made up of tiny drops of water. Even so, life is but an endless series of little details, actions, speeches, and thoughts. And the consequences, whether good or bad, of even the least of them are far-reaching. Everything has positive and negative consequences. I believe that life is chaotic, a jumble of accidents, ambitions, misconceptions, bold intentions, lazy happenstances, and unintended consequences. Yet I also believe that there are connections that illuminate our world, revealing its endless mystery and wonder. Thanks to presidential immunity and executive control of the Justice Department, there are no consequences to executive branch lawbreaking. And when it comes to presidential lawbreaking, the sitting president could literally strangle someone to death on national television and meet with no consequences. All science is based on models, and every scientific model comprises three distinct stages: statement of well-defined hypotheses, deduction of all the consequences of these hypotheses, and nothing but these consequences, confrontation of these consequences with observed data. I hate imperialism, I detest colonialism, and I fear the consequences of their last bitter struggle for life. We are determined that our nation, and the world as a whole, shall not be the plaything of one small corner of the world. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.